All right, so I am going to work number 2 on our suggested problems from day 1 for probability. The question reads, is segment PQ congruent to segment RS given that point P is 1, 2, point Q is 5, 4, point R is negative 3, 5, and point S is 2, 3. And I give you the distance formula there. Really the reason why is if the two lines are congruent, they're going to have the same measurement. So I give you the distance formula here. If you notice, I put all my X's in purple and all my Y's in red. Now I'm looking to see, is PQ congruent to RS? That is my question. And we know that we could show that it is congruent if the distance of PQ equals the distance of RS. So we're going to use the distance formula basically twice and just compare the numbers at the end when we're done. All right, so let's look here. I've already written down the points for us. And of course, they're in purple and red. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the formula for PQ to find the actual distance. All right, so now I have it all set up. I'm keeping with the color theme here. The question itself is brown. Anything that's going to be black is just part of the generic formula. And then all my purples are going to be my X values. All of my reds end up being my Y values. Once I start doing the math, the X and the Y values kind of go away. So we're going to kind of keep it with black going forward. So here I set up the formula. My distance formula is the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 quantity squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 quantity squared. And once you add those together, you're going to take the square root of them. You're going to get a nice number. Nice number meaning that it's nice if you like math. If not, it might not be so pretty. You could get a rational or irrational number by doing this. All right. My x values for P and Q are 5 and 1, so I plug them into my formula, 5 minus 1. And of course, I'm leaving the square there because that's in black. My Y values, which are in red, are 4 and 2, so because 4 minus 2. The order does matter. If you pick one of the points over here, P and Q, if you pick one of them as point 1, the other one is point 2. So I could call this x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. Do not mix them up. Don't say x sub 1, y sub 2. Don't do that. No, don't do that. That is bad. That is bad. All right. Now that we've kind of gone through that, let's do some math here. So 5 minus 1 becomes 4. We're going to square it. And then 4 minus 2, we have to add. 4 minus 2 is 2 squared. And of course, we have to take the square root of it. Well, 4 squared is 16. And 2 squared is 4. Still have to take the square root. 16 plus 4 is 20. Still have to take the square root. Then we want to break this down. And the way we do that is we're going to do a factor tree. 20. 2 goes into 20 10 times. 2 goes into 10 5 times. I have a pair of 2, so one of them comes on the outside. And whatever is not paired up gets multiplied back together underneath the square root. So I have 2 square root 5, which is actually the same thing as 2 square root 20. You could type in the calculator to check to see if it is true, but it is true. So now what this tells me is when I calculate RS, the distance for RS, if it is also square root of 20 or 2 square root 5, then segment PQ is going to be congruent to segment RS. If they're not, then those two segments are not congruent. So I'm going to come over here and calculate the RS. All right, so now I have my basic framework set up here. So to do my RS, my first X value is going to be 2. And of course, we are going to subtract that from a negative 3. Can't write today. It's all good. And then we're going to do my Y's, which will end up being 3 minus 5. Remember, once you pick, you have to stay with it. So over here, my R, I chose this to be x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. So you want to keep them in that order. Now that we've got that taken care of, let's do some math. So 2 minus the negative 3 really becomes 2 plus 3. We have to square it. And 3 minus 2 is negative 2, and we have to square that. And of course, we have to take the square root of the whole thing. 2 plus 3 is 5 squared plus negative 2 squared. Take the square root of the whole thing, which is going to give me 25 plus 4. Take the square root. And this is the square root of 29. Well, when I compare the two, when I compare this answer with this answer, or really it might be easier to see this answer and this answer, we can see that the square root of 20 does not equal the square root of 29. Therefore, remember these three little dots up here means therefore, PQ, segment PQ, is not congruent to segment RS.